We're glad you've joined us today on Austin Faith Dialogue. Today our conversation is with two people from the Austin area who over a 10-year period have developed a marvelous medical mission ministry in Central America. Stay with us for today's Austin Faith Dialogue.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thanks for joining us this week on Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Sandy Wilder, your host, and today we're in for a wonderful conversation with two people who've developed an amazing ministry in Central America, a medical mission ministry, although they themselves come from very different backgrounds. Our guests today are Steve Gillet and Diane Gillet, and you've created Christian Medical Ministries Incorporated, Christian Medical Mission Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Diane, the first question is for you. What is your background for doing this medical mission work in Central America?
We have no medical training at all. Stephen's an architect, I'm an interior designer, and we just happened to fall into this, and in a second you'll learn a little bit about our history and how we did do this.
But what have you learned about medical work along the way? Surely you've learned something.
Oh, a tremendous amount. I can be a pharmacist now. I have learned a tremendous amount about medicines, and when I get down there and start working in the pharmacy, I can tell which medicines that the doctor is going to prescribe and know if we have it. So it's been very helpful.
A good on-the-job training.
Well,
I know we've got a video to show here in just a minute, which actually takes us on a bit of a medical mission trip. But Steve, tell us a little bit about how CMMI got started. What was the initial dream, and where are you now?
Well, we got started approximately 11 years ago, and the way it got started is I met a missionary priest from Panama who came to the Austin area on a typical financial appeal. And I asked him if I could help him with any kind of project, since I'm an architect, and he said, yes, you can actually help me immediately and come down there and design a church. So I did that, and I got to know him. So the second year I also asked him what I could do, and this time I bring a group of friends, Americans, down to Central America to help his people. And he asked me if we can build a school building for the Cuna Indians in the Darien province of Panama, because they don't have schools, and but if they do have a building, the government will send them a teacher. So that's what we did, and the first 5 people to sign up were nurses. And so I guess God was telling me a story here that maybe I ought to go find a doctor to go with them, and we can help them medically. So what we did the first year is we brought 29 people, and we recruited half of them for the construction project and the other half to do medical services for the Indians in this area of Panama.
A strong start with 29 people.
It was a big group.
Well, now the video, as I understand, takes us on a more typical tour with the medical people that you work with now. So let's take a look at the video and see CMMI in action.
Okay.
Every year when we go back, now these people consider us their family doctors, and you get to know the people. You know, out of the 2,000 or 3,000 we see in that 1 week, of course you don't know that many, but really there's probably 100 to 200 that over the 5 years you really get to know personally, that live in the general area of the major clinic that we're in. And just to see their faces and to feel the brotherly love between the two cultures is just fantastic.
The people who volunteer for these missions
are basically in the same mindset as everyone who has attended these missions. They have the desire, they have the faith that they can help someone who's in need. They already have that spiritual quality about them that they feel that they need to help, that they want to help, that they have the love in their heart to help these people.
The basic question you keep asking yourself is, who's getting the most out of it? The people that you're seeing, or the people that are giving the help? And I think it's the latter. I think all the people that have been here, that we get much more out of it than we give.
Before I got involved in this, I was probably very typical of most dentists and doctors and nurses. We all find an excuse, you know, well, I can't leave my practice for a week, or, you know, I can't leave my family and this and that. But after you get over that barrier and just kind of surrender yourself to what God wants us to do. He's called us here to love, to serve, and be disciples. And if we have a talent that we can do and serve these people mixed in with love, I mean, what more is there to life? I mean, this is what He's called us to do.
You just see Jesus in these people. You look into their eyes and you see all the faith that Jesus gives them to get through their hardships. But you see quite a bit of happiness and love, just total love in their eyes for us.
But really the main thing that it brings them is it brings them hope. It brings them hope that other people that are not as fortunate as them care about them, and they see that love and that we're all one big group of people that have the same common interest to help our fellow man.
Thanks for sharing the video with us. I'm sorry that as we dubbed it for use here in the program, it vibrated some, but I think people got the idea. So tell us then, either one of you, a little bit about the specific work. We saw some of the pictures, but tell us a little bit about the specific work that your teams do.
Well, we recruit doctors and dentists, optometrists to go down, and the doctors will actually see a family of people and diagnose each ailment. If they have ailments, we do a lot of well baby checks and hand out a lot of vitamins, but there are times when we will stitch up a machete wound. We can remove pterygiums if we have an ophthalmologist go with us. A pterygium is a red covering on the eye that they remove, and it starts to affect the vision. The pull teeth, we now have a drilling unit, a portable drilling unit, and we're able to fill teeth, so we can save a lot more teeth now, which is so much better in the children at least. The optometrist sees the people for eyes, and we now have what's called a phocometer, and it was developed at the University of Houston, and it's for lay field people to check the eyes of these people, so we don't have to have an optometrist if one doesn't volunteer.
And I know we've got some pictures of some of the doctors actually at work, so let's take a look at what they're doing based on what you've described.
This is Mary Maxwell, and she is checking a child's throat, baby's throat, and it's basically a well baby check for this Kuna Indian. This is Dr. Tim Tischler, a dentist, and here he is pulling a tooth out of a patient. in Acuna Village. And as you can see, we were working under a tent that we had put up. This is Pepe Martinez. He's an ophthalmologist from Austin, and he is checking the eyes of this Kuna woman to see if she needs glasses.
So now, Steve, let me ask you, where do you find the people to volunteer? Are they all from around here and they're just chomping at the bit to go on a mission trip?
Well, yes and no. This is our 11th year of bringing teams down into Central America. And one thing I want to mention now is we bring teams into Panama, Nicaragua, and Bolivia. And we have been into Mexico, but the other 3 countries are the ones we regularly go to. It's primarily been a ministry through word of mouth. We started 11 years ago with local people, and just due to their experiences and the typical network you develop through that is how we recruit people. We're going into another stage of our ministry now where our ministry is spread due to these initial trips, and we are using other means to recruit people because that's one of our biggest needs now is additional doctors, dentists, optometrists, and most importantly interpreters. So we're using the internet, of course. We have a website, christianmedical.org, and we have a mailing list that we send out, approximately 400 mailings a year. So we have a newsletter. So through those different types of medias, we're able to get the recruits we need. But we're also expanding quite a bit, so we need additional help in our different trips we take each year.
Medical people and translators, you said, and Spanish-English translators, right?
Correct. We need the basic, the medical doctors, the dentist, optometrist or ophthalmologist, and translators, because most of these medical professionals aren't bilingual. We probably only get 10 to 15% of the people that are bilingual, so we need a translator to sit with that medical profession.
And I know we'll come back to this in a bit, but it looks like from the video and from the still photos that you really need people who are prepared to go to isolated areas, right?
Yes, we try to target the people in areas of Panama, Nicaragua, and Bolivia who have no access to clinics or even doctors of any sort. So we've become family doctors to these people. They see us once a year, they expect us, and they wait for us.
Out there where there isn't any medical care.
Right.
Well, we'll come back in just a little bit for some more conversation and to take a look at some more of your photos, hoping that we can interest some people in feeling the call to participate in this kind of ministry. Thank you. Thank you for being with us for the first half. We'll be right back with the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay with us. We're glad you're here for the second half of Austin Faith Dialogue, and we're talking today about Christian Medical Mission Incorporated, an organization doing amazing things in Central America, all from the efforts of you folks and others who work with you. Steve Gillet and Diane Gillet of CMMI, good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before the break, we were talking a little bit about where you go, but I think, Diane, you wanted to say something more about the areas and show us how your medical people get where they're going. So why don't you share that?
There are a variety of we get to the different areas that we travel to. Our first trip in January is to Father Wally's mission in Panama, which is about 100 miles east of Panama City, going toward Colombia. That is on the Pan American Highway, which is just a dirt road that has potholes as big as the car. It's difficult to travel on, especially in wet weather. So we go in the summer, which January, February, March is the summer in Panama. It's a very remote area. People travel mostly by horseback to get to us, and walk a lot. They'll walk for several days to get to Father Wally's mission.
And so how does your team get in? We saw the helicopter in the video, but you also go by water in some places too, don't you?
We do. If we go into Acuna village, we will be picked up by the Indians at the river, and we have to take these dugout canoes into the village. And then in March, we go on another trip, which is we take large dugout canoes out into the Pacific and go south towards Colombia, and then back up into the rivers, because that's the only way you can get to some of these villages, is by water. So we spend a lot of time traveling in these big dugout canoes. Now, the government has given us helicopters every once in a while to get us into the more difficult areas. We travel by van, which goes through rivers, and sometimes we're having to be pulled through with four-wheel drive vehicles. Horseback, foot. We get there any way we can.
And there's 4 trips a year, generally to the same kinds of areas, right?
Yes.
Relatively remote, transportation difficult.
Yes. Bolivia will be our first trip in June to Bolivia, and so we have not scoped it out yet. So we don't know how we'll be traveling in that area yet. In Nicaragua, we fly into Managua, and then we fly a little puddle jumper into the village that we go to, where they land on the main street, which is just a gravel road in town. And so traveling actually is pretty easy in Nicaragua.
Taking your supplies with you, because if this is like most medical mission teams, you have to bring in a great deal, correct?
A huge amount of medical supplies.
Right.
We limit each team member to one suitcase, and then we use their other checked on luggage box of medicine.
Well, now, tell us a little bit about, Steve, you can probably say something about the villages where you go, because I know we have a picture of that, which may be far different from what people would expect.
A lot of our trips, we're going into the rainforest area where the indigenous Indians still live. And in January, for instance, we go to Panama, and we go to the Cuna Indian Reservation, as well as we see some Panamanian homesteaders in that area. In March, we go to the Huanan Indians, and they live along the Pacific coastline towards Colombia. And that's what this picture on the screen right now is about. They live in a housing that is off the ground. And then in Bolivia, Bolivia has mostly indigenous people, and we're going there in June, and then we do our final trip of the year to Nicaragua in September.
I'm intrigued with the fact that the two of you don't have a medical background, architect and interior designer, but something is pulling you to do this. I wonder if you could say something about your faith motivation, and perhaps that of other people who are on the trip, because I'm sure it's not an accident that the organization is Christian Medical Mission.
Right. God just pulled us in this direction, and I'm very thankful that we did answer His call. It's been a tremendous experience. We have blessings here that we can't even count, and we feel like that they need to be shared with these people that are, much less fortunate than us.
Now, while you're on the trips, do people share their faith then with the persons who they're working with? in Panama, Nicaragua, Bolivia, etc.? And do you have like team devotionals?
Well, I would say that that is done in our group, our medical group, our American volunteers who come with us, because as soon as we hit one of those villages, we're busy. And we open our clinic typically at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we might stay as late as 8 o'clock, in some cases as long as midnight under lanterns. So we do share our faith through our actions and our words with the people and our love that we give them. But to actually go and teach them a lesson of Scripture somewhere, we have no time for that. But we are going with organized Christian denominations, and therefore normally a minister or a priest is with us on the trip, and they are doing that while we're doing our medical services.
So there is a visible faith presence.
Yes.
And I wonder what you would say to people who say, well, you only go in once a year, provide a little medical care, and then you're gone. How are you making a long-term difference in anybody's life?
Well, we've been doing it for 11 years, so you get to know the people. They become friends of yours. So due to that, we've had a lot of offshoots of our ministry. Some of them, we started a scholarship program for children, and not necessarily just children, but college-age kids. We had our first graduated from a school of medicine in Panama, and so now she's a doctor in Panama. We supported her through medical school in Panama. We have 3 other college students in schools in Panama in different fields, and then we have about 25 children in different ages from elementary to high school that we're supporting to help give them an opportunity in life where they can experience a full life. And then also, because we see these indigenous people in Panama, their drinking water is typically out of the river that we canoe up to get to them. And due to that, they continually have medical problems, and all we can do is help them that one little week. So we have put in grants, and we're expecting them to be funded this year for potable water systems for each village. We have a grant in for 6 villages. And so we hope to get that money and get the equipment and install that equipment probably in the next year to 18 months, so we can start making a long-term effect in their lives.
Okay.
And then the last thing we have that is an offshoot of our original mission goals was we have established an emergency medical fund for the people in Panama or Nicaragua or Bolivia, whoever we tend to see when we're there. And a lot of times if they get severely ill, they will go to the closest clinic, and of course very few of them have money to support the services they need. And through volunteers we have in those countries, they'll contact us and we'll fund some of their operations.
So CMMI is not just immediate medical needs, but you're really building for the long term. It sounds like God is leading you in some really creative directions.
We hope so.
Where do you see, Diane, CMMI going in the next few years? This has really been a partnership between you and Steve. I wonder what sort of dreams you have for the organization.
Well, I would like to see it grow into more trips like we have this year. It's just about the most we can handle at this time. It's just Stephen and I who head this, and so volunteer would be nice here in the States. We would like to be able to bring more effective medicines with us sometimes, and that's sometimes difficult to get because medicines, as you know, are very, very expensive, and we try to take as the most effective medicines down that we can. But we would like to be able to see these villages become free of their parasites, because it's a tremendous problem. The children have their growth stunted by the parasites from the drinking water and from walking along paths where the dogs and horses have also walked, so they pick them up in their feet. We just want to see the health improve and the education improve for these people.
We have one last picture while we continue to talk, and that's a picture, as it turns out, of the two of you, I believe, standing with some children. I'm curious to know, Steve, how you would answer people who say, oh, there are so many medical mission organizations, why one more? What do you tell people about what's different about CMMI?
Well, our main difference, and I'm not sure it's the main difference because a lot of them are still doing this too, is we try to go beyond the typical medical system of the country we're visiting and reach the people that don't have the opportunity to see doctors. So most medical missions are normally situated in one of the cities where there's a hospital or a clinic and work out of that. So, and that's important, but what we're trying to do is go a little beyond that, and that's why we see a lot of indigenous people, because they're still living in the rainforest. And besides that, you know, that's about all we can do to help these people live a better life.
That's true. Most of us do what we can.
Right.
How has working with CMMI changed you?
Change me? Well, you'd probably ask my wife and she'd be able to tell you, but
I'll ask her next.
It just has made me a more humble person, really appreciate the things that we have here in the United States or in our industrialized world. And just, we have so much, just an opportunity to try and help people that don't have as much as us. And so it's a humbling effect.
Over a decade, yes. And how has CMMI changed you, Diane?
Stephen said it very well. It humbles you quite a bit, and it makes you aware of the blessings that you have. I find myself constantly thanking God every day, almost every hour of the day, for the little things that just pop up. And because I don't see that, you know, the people down there have, of course, the monetary blessings that we have, and we can share that. So that is, I think that's the way it's changed us the most. Mostly just humbling us and thanking and just counting our blessings.
And it sounded like in the video that some of your volunteers feel that same call. So, again, what's your phone number for volunteers?
It is 328-7047.
Or check your website, which is christianmedical.org, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
It's been good to have both of you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Let's
you.
hope the trips grow and increase, and CMMI does wonderful stuff. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having us.
And thank you for joining us today on Austin Faith Dialogue. We'll see you here again next week.